I'm here with Colin Levy, writer/director of the short film En Route that's to be screened November 1st during the film festival. So Colin, can you tell us a little bit about your film?
En Route is an 8-minute short film. It's told mainly through images, and we follow the life and career of an airline pilot in reverse chronological order. So we're going back. It starts in a plane crash, and we sort of follow his life all the way back to a pivotal moment that he experiences as a child, which ends up having enormous ramifications.
What was your inspiration for writing the story?
I keep a notebook, and so I try to just constantly be writing down ideas. And just one of the things, like an image occurred to me of a kid flying a kite. You know, personally, as a child, my grandfather used to take me all the time to fly kites, and it was pretty kind of special. I mean, that's sort of my memories of him had a lot to do with flight. He would have, you know, kites, radio-controlled airplanes, and little airplanes that you wind up. And so I sort of thought, you know, it's interesting to follow people's careers, or to see how decisions influence each other over a period of time. I didn't decide to do it until I came up with the twist, and the idea of doing it in reverse order. And you know, we end it with a statement. So once I had that sort of story structure in place, I thought this was a film worth making.
Obviously, when you first started making the film, you had goals for it, and now that it's in the film festival, have your goals changed at all?
Yeah, I started this in December 2009, and so that was a long time ago, and I can't imagine, like, the vision I had of the film, you know, the final film, was very, very different. I thought the film would be a really short piece, like literally 4 minutes long, and I thought it would be a good festival contender, or at least one of my first projects to really push and try to promote myself with. But my goals, you know, from month to month were definitely changing, because I'm not as familiar with the entire process as I guess I am now.
Can you briefly go through the process of putting a film like this together?
The process of making a short film like this is incredibly intimidating. There's just so much involved, and I had never really worked on something this big before. I mean, it's only an 8-minute film, but there's a lot involved. Basically, you start with the script. You break down the script to figure out exactly what you're going to need, you know, producing-wise, and then there's the process of storyboarding it, casting, holding auditions, finding locations and getting permits, drafting a budget, you know, hiring a crew, sort of figuring out a schedule and plotting that out, you know, managing the equipment, or figuring out how exactly things are going to work. There ended up being, you know, around 30 people on set for most of the days that we were shooting. There's a lot of experimentation done in post-production. And then finally, the visual effects process for the film was very lengthy and ambitious. We ended up having a team of over 15 people working on the film in the visual effects department, led by Sandra Blattner, and there was over 40 visual effects shots, even shots that don't look like visual effects shots. You know, had backgrounds replaced, or elements moved, or paint over, or some rotoscoping work. So I'm especially proud of how my visual effects team just blew this film out of the water and really made it what it is today.
Would you say that the intimidation factor was your greatest obstacle during the making of the film?
It's interesting. Yeah, I think, I mean, filmmaking is just a huge series of challenges. So it's hard to figure out what the biggest challenge is. In the first week, we actually had to recast our main character. We cast someone, and he ended up having a medical issue that basically meant, you know, he was out of the picture. We couldn't use him for anything else. And we'd only shot, fortunately, one major scene with him, but you know, we had stuff scheduled for that weekend, and basically we ended up in a situation where we had less than 24 hours to recast the character. There was one scene that was supposed to take place on the bleachers, where our main character, Harry, who's now 15 years old, looks up and is watching this air show. And basically, I was expecting to show up on set and have, you know, 20 to 30 extras to work with, sort of ideally. and one person showed up. And we couldn't have a scene that takes place on the bleachers with one other person. So we had to rethink that, and we ended up just making some calls, and we ended up at a place on Oglethorpe, I think, a car dealership. And that ended up being one of my favorite shots in the whole film. In the middle of post-production, I actually left for Amsterdam. I got this opportunity to work on to direct a short 3D animated film, and because of that, I had to leave while work on En Route was still being done. And I was really nervous that the whole project would just sort of collapse without me, because the work was being done here in the visual effects department, and so many shots had to be worked on. And it's just a huge workload, and I just sort of assumed, you know, without a director sort of motivating the team and making sure that the work was sort of what I had in mind and worked for the film, I just was really nervous about the future of the project. But I just had a great team who stuck it out to the end, even while I was sort of keeping tabs on them long distance.
Do you think that the overcoming of these obstacles were also your greatest triumphs?
Exactly, I would say exactly that. Yeah, like that shot that was basically one of my favorites in the film. Wouldn't have gotten that. Absolutely not. Yeah, and I think it's stronger for sure. Of course, I don't know. There's always things that I see that I'd like to change, or things that didn't work out quite as well as they could have. It's hard not to wince when I look at the film now, but of course, I mean, that's the same with anyone who does creative work.
What have you learned from this experience?
Not only have I become better as a filmmaker and as a storyteller, as an editor, but I've gotten better at working with people. I feel like I understand the process of filmmaking better. I think in terms of the management side of things, I've just learned a lot, you know, personally and professionally, sort of, you know, in this project. I think definitely the way I look back at my education at SCAD, I feel like the most valuable things I've done have been on projects.
Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Absolutely.
Catch En Route November 1st at 2:30 in the Lucas Theater.